Well, as always, I never know quite how long it's going to take between the time that I click the button and the time that we are here.
Mm.
I don't know, Hugh, if you have looked at the title for today's show. I will ask you, do you ever play golf?
I played golf once, and the first time I played golf, it just so happened that we were arranging for a golf lesson.
Aha.
And so I had an instructor that was showing me how to do it, and surprisingly, I really liked the game. It was intelligent,
Yeah.
required patience and timing. It allowed you to be able to appreciate perspective. There was a really nice view. And of course, there was, the kind of overbearing social commentary that comes with the implications of what a golf course actually means in current society, but we won't go there.
Yeah.
So it was a very rich experience, and I am using that word with all the puns. Um, and I realized in playing that little bit of golf, got very, very great feedback from the instructor that it was something that I absolutely would adore learning how to get better at. And among all the other interests I had, it was probably not going to make the cut in this lifetime,
You
but maybe
you have
another.
you have got a few things that you put your attention to. Uh, Today I thought that a couple of non-golfers, because I have played golf all of I think 4 times.
Okay.
I thought that a couple of non-golfers could talk about golf's sanity lessons for
Hmm.
leaders.
Okay.
There are lessons in sanity for leaders that can be taken from the golf course. Uh, I believe we probably both know enough about golf to have a pretty fun conversation, and I know how many leaders love golf like you. I have really enjoyed the very little bit of golf that I've played. In fact, I even bought some clubs, and the only thing
Oh,
that's kept
wow.
me from the course in the last few weeks is that I have decided to bike from Seattle to Portland, and I've been training for that with all of the time that would have gone to golf.
So you see the visceral reaction that you had when I talked about Murph?
Yes.
That is the visceral reaction I am having with listening to you talk about riding from city to city. That just
Yeah.
sounds painful
It's
and
only
hard.
200 miles.
Oh my God, 200 miles
Uh,
outside.
yeah. Well, on Saturday, I put in 40 miles on my bike.
Wow, congratulations. That's
Yeah.
outstanding.
Thank you. So I actually think I'm going to succeed at biking the 200 from Seattle to Portland, and that's not what we've come here to talk about. So there are a lot of reactions that you can see. Somebody steps up to the tee and they take a little while. They get their posture, they get their grip. They take a couple of practice swings. You've probably seen how this goes. And then they take their little steps up to the ball, wind up, and let her rip. And very often the ball does not do what they wanted it to do. Um, and so let's talk about the actions that they take.
Mm.
Some of the actions that, and I'm not immune to this. I have definitely done some of these things. What are the actions that you have seen people take immediately after a bad hit, or that you
Mhm.
imagine they might take? And I've got some in my pocket. So, Hugh, if you don't have any to hand, I can supply some.
Well, I love the framing because we already are showing and exposing our bias. Um, I may not have spent a lot of time on the golf course, but I am no stranger to bad hits from my time at Top Golf and those kinds
Ah,
of changes. And so the bad hits, the fact that we think of them as bad hits is really interesting to me. Uh, because,
leave it to
yeah,
you to
well,
deflect the
well,
moment.
I'll tell you where we're going with it because
Yeah.
what's interesting to me, what I like about some of these golf adjacent activities,
Yeah.
where they will have some of these challenges, is that instead of it being a single objective just to hit a ball in a hole, they have all of these different goals that are possible within the same framework of
Mm.
hitting a ball into a series of holes in a couple of places.
And for
And
a
it is,
viewer or listener who may not be familiar, Top Golf is a real golf ball with
Mhm.
a real golf club. And instead of hitting it onto a real golf course, you hit it directly into a video screen that may
Well,
have a golf course on it or a
well,
driving range.
in this case, there's actually a field that has golf-like terrain
Yes.
several hundred meters into the
Ah,
distance with a
ah,
huge net, a
yes.
ball collecting net, hundreds of yards away,
So it's a drive. This is a driving
like
range.
a driving range, but with mini games and bays from which to play and engage.
Yeah.
So there is definitely the electronic version. I am talking about the actual one where you're hitting a real ball into a real golf hole hundreds of yards away, and there are many other targets. And what's neat about some of the mini games is that there are multiple objectives, so you can score different points. There are places where the idea isn't to necessarily hit it as far and as hard as you can, but you have zones of different playing. And what that brought my attention to is how singular our focus can be in
Mm,
hitting a ball, because
mm,
there's so many other things that are possible in justifying our stepping up to the tee and hitting it.
mm.
That's one of the, so coming back to the regular playing of golf, it's curious to me that, and again, we've all agreed what the rules are supposed to be and how the etiquette is supposed to happen on a particular golf course and how you move around and advance from one place to the other. And yet, so much more value is potentially available for the same effort and the same theater for your consideration.
Okay. And if your eyes are glazing over because you don't care about golf, we are going to be talking about lessons in sanity for leaders. Um, so if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, there a golfer steps up to the tee with a
Hmm.
particular intention in mind, hit the ball down the fairway
Yes.
so that the next hit has the greatest chance of getting onto the green or into the hole or whatever.
Because that is the stated and assumed objective.
Yes. And so what I think I hear you suggesting is
How many
what?
other
State it
ways
state
are
it
there?
real.
How many other ways are there to be able to assess value from the effort?
Okay. So you're making me think of and now I'm going to kick myself and I may even have to look it up. But somebody said very wittily, golf is a good walk spoiled.
Now that I could get behind.
I
So,
am going to have to look it up, right? So one of the things that I hear us suggesting, and I think I can get behind this. Uh, uh, Mark Twain, of course, is the one who said that. So uh, one of the lessons for sanity
mm,
that may be available here is that you think you know what the goal is, and maybe there is something more valuable available than your intention. And I think of businesses that pivot before they ever get off the ground. You think you know what this business is going to be as you are founding it and beginning your startup and raising your funds and hiring your team and building your product. And how many companies are there that didn't succeed until their second, maybe third pivot?
and
Turns out maybe
recognize.
that hole on that green is
Mhm.
not the best target for you to have been shooting for.
Well, and so there's so much to appreciate from the moment, right? We're not asking for you to imagine. Well, so here's where I think you were trying to trap me. Here's the trap that I didn't fall into. So the trap I didn't fall into is you step up to the tee, you swing, the ball goes in some strange direction, and there is rejection, resistance, cursing, a reaction that's
Yeah.
visceral because things did not work out as expected. That's the quintessential framework that I think of when somebody goes up,
That is
takes all the
the
effort,
frame I thought we
and
we might talk
so
inside of.
because I don't play by anybody's rules, to hell with your frame. So anyway,
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
so you're making me have a bad hit. My framing is good.
Ah, so let me share with
This
you.
ball did not go where I expected it to.
So this is exactly where you wanted me to go. The challenge with that, of course, and the frame about all of this is we don't want people to not respect the goals that they've set. It's important for you to hit your target. If you need to make $8,000 this month, and that's because you have $8,000 worth of bills that you've got to pay, then we cannot take that goal lightly. At the same time, there's nothing but feedback. So there are lots of ways for you to
Mm,
model and frame the feedback that you have received now that you have results. What
mm,
do you know? So you've hit the ball. Now you have an opportunity to absorb the feedback. And what does that mean? You can react from a place of frustration and resistance. And please have your emotional response. And then let's get back to business.
mm.
So, what are the opportunities in that moment? Am I standing in a way that is helping the ball to go in a place where I wanted it to go? What did I learn from the swing that I did make? What did I do right that actually worked? So that, because there are lots of ways to swing that doesn't actually even result in the ball going anywhere.
as I as I can attest.
So there is something we did right enough to get results that allowed us to be able to have feedback. So if we can just for a moment, after, before, during, or after the visceral reaction of resistance to our own result, just take a moment to appreciate that there is more. There's a really good I don't remember if it was the omnivore's dilemma or in defense of food. There's one of these books that the fellow who writes that, I don't remember his name now either, uh, talks about with the development of fertilizer. I know this is going to sound like a really weird tangent, but I am not.
Michael Pollan.
Yes, Michael Pollan. That's right. I'm not going off on a tangent. I promise. Here we go. So the idea is that industrial fertilizer is primarily made of three substances: sodium, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK. And because of the advent of sodium, phosphorus, and potassium based fertilizers, we have increased the yield of our food by almost 10,000% over the last 100 years. Amazing, amazing, amazing achievement. Here's what's interesting: we have also, over the last 100 years, experienced a dramatic decrease in the nutrient density of said food. So even though the fruits are bigger and they are more plentiful and they are more voluminous than they've ever been, they are less nutritious than they've ever been. And it's primarily because we have focused on the three ingredients that promote growth. But what has happened is that there are all these other nutrients, these micronutrients in the soil that are being bleached out, and there's no way or focus on replenishing them.
Yeah, the fertilizer doesn't include those trace elements.
Exactly. And so as a result, all those micronutrients that were a very important part of creating dense nutrition in the food has now just kind of been bleached away. And that was one of the points from this book that I'm citing. And I think about that all the time related to the domains that we're in, where we so heavily focus on the NPK of our domain, on the thing that defines success.
Mm.
Almost at all costs, we don't avail ourselves of all the other things that are in the soil that could make for a rich experience. And so I come back to the trap that you were having me step into, and I will tell you, how many other ways are there for us to, one, model the situation? So I have swung and I have not gotten to my destination. What else has happened? How can I objectively understand this so I can see what is of benefit that has occurred so that I can adjust and pivot and be flexible to get to the eventual objective with now a different set of feedback? Or and how can I learn from what I have done that was not intended so that I can course correct? And what can I replicate that I did do well? All of those things are in play, and all of those things don't happen if the majority of our reaction is absorbed by the resistance to, oh my God, I screwed up.
Yeah, the frustration. Well, and oh my God, I screwed up is is I would say perhaps more valuable than some of the reactions that people have after a swing and a ball flight that isn't what they intended. Before we
Oh,
get there,
you mean like where they blame their club, or they
I
blame
have
the
seen,
grounds,
on
they drag things.
the very first hole. All right, you're going to take us right there. The very first hole. I remember seeing someone remove the padded cover from their driver.
Okay.
Right. So this thing it has this really padded sock on it, basically. Right. They
Mm-hmm.
remove it. It's now head up. So the head is looking them square in the face. They remove that from its bag. They take their practice swings. They swing, they hit the ball does not do what they intend for it to do. And the first thing that this guy did was to look at the face of that club to see what dirt might or damage might be on it. Right, this babied instrument. And I think we spend an awful lot of time looking at all kinds of things, right? In sales, we may look at the prospect for their defect. In as leaders, we may look at the individuals on our team for their defect. I remember my grandmother learning to use her Macintosh computer decades ago, and grappling with what I told her many times. Hey, Bubby, it's garbage in, garbage out. Right? If you put in the wrong signal, you're gonna get the wrong result, and that's gonna happen every time. So instead of going immediately to what's wrong with this computer, you have to be asking yourself,
What did I do?
what?
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And to your point, there's so much information, and here we are, right? The non-players of golf talking about golf, but the flight of the ball, whatever it may be, has a ton of information about your inputs.
Yes. 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 And how I think it's a fantastic analog for what are your opportunities for how you handle that information as a leader. Are you going to be the person that questions the validity of your golf clubs and whether or not the face is clean enough? Or are you going to be the person that blames the tilt on the floor and whether or not there was a grade on the tarmac that you were hitting from? Are you going to be a person that says it was too windy? And all of those things could absolutely be true.
Oh, yes. And
the responsibility still remains. What is the experience?
100%. These are the variables that are yours to engage with. My propensity in this family of insanity is to say things to myself like, where'd that tree come from? Or
that wasn't there when we started.
If I trip on something in my own home, right? And it may have been there all day, right? It was there when I walked by, And now, I'm kind of moving backwards, and I will curse to myself, who put that there? Usually it was me.
But even if not, I mean, again, part of so I am a fan of what I consider to be intelligence. And I am pretty staunch with how I define intelligence. Intelligence to me is the ability to respond in a congruent way to an ever changing universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is, what is the response that is appropriate to a universe such that I am not in resistance?
And that's how I call this lessons in sanity, right? That there
Hmm.
is some sanity missing when we expect a changing universe to always be the same and to be exactly how we want it to be.
Or worse, we expect it to be something that it isn't and couldn't be.
Ain't that the truth?
Ah, I had a very interesting customer experience where I was thinking to myself, well, the situation is we had some work to do for him, and things unfolded exactly as I remember. They we told him that there would be a part of his project that would be done on a certain time, and then there would be another part of his project that would be done when it was done, because it was a quality sensitive topic, and we don't get paid hourly, so we get paid when we finish the milestone, and we are always balancing how do we do perfect work and deliver as quickly as possible. So we're not going to rush because we can do irreparable harm to the environments that we play in. And it was interesting that I guess, I don't know if he has integrity problems or just cash flow problems or maybe a combination of both, but he never paid us for certain milestones. And we just stopped the work until he paid us for those milestones. And then at some point, he got caught up with his payments. We were supposed to finish the project. He made a bunch of demands that we had to finish the project by a certain amount of time. We figured, you know what, let's play the game. So we decided to go ahead and finish the project in the time that he had basically stipulated. And even with all of that, the bill that we have still hasn't been paid.
Hmm.
And he is refusing to communicate in an effective manner to get the bill paid. And again, not sure if it's a cash flow issue or an integrity issue or a combination of both. I kind of expected that it was going to happen. So when it happened, it was like, okay, here we are. And I put that in distinct contrast to customers that had exactly the same setup, but I hadn't been ready for them not to pay. And
Mm.
my instinct and reaction was so much more visceral.
Mm.
And I realized, okay, now I get to play a different game. We're just going to play again. And it might involve some lawyers. We might have a bit of an adventure, maybe some horrible letters. Maybe we even get to go to court. What an adventure that might happen. Who knows?
Yeah.
But look at that. Consider the intelligence available when I wasn't sitting in absolute resistance or horror or terror or some kind of anxiety with regard to the potentially impending adventure
That
that is
when
going to
someone
begin with
behaves
the birth.
like this, it's a good sign that they may behave like that. It reminds me of the story of the scorpion and the frog. Do you know this
Mhm.
story?
I am very familiar. Yes.
Where in case you are unfamiliar, uh, the story goes that the water is rising. There's a flood coming, and the frog is really having not too much trouble with this, planning to swim from island A, where the water is rising and is going to disappear, to shore B, and no problem for a frog. And the scorpion, which is also on the island, asks the frog for a ride, and the frog says, I can't do that with you. You're a scorpion. You'll sting me and I'll die." And the scorpion says, "Well, I'll be I'll be counting on you for my own survival. Why would I do that? If you die with me on your back, then we both die. So you can count on me to not sting you." The frog sees the logic in that, allows the scorpion to climb on his back. Halfway across the river, the scorpion stings the frog, and as the frog is sinking into the abyss, says,
Why'd you sting
"Why
me?
did you sting me? You too will die." And the scorpion said,
Because I
"I'm
was
a
scorpion.
scorpion."
So, well, what I will tell you is the next generation or the next level to that is just recognizing that whatever is happening is exactly what has been set up to happen.
Mm,
And that's the growth, is
right.
recognizing that whether he would have paid or he would not have paid, it is in my best interest to resist nothing and just play the game wherever it plays.
Right
And
on.
so, in making the decision to complete the work, because I think this was also important, in making the decision to complete the work, I knew very well that there was a very distinct probability that he would not pay. And then I realized that my actions cannot be dependent on somebody else's potential reaction. My actions have to be congruent with my highest and best values. And so, what means more for me in that moment was I get to do my most perfect work and then see what happens. And the reason I'm telling you this is just like we step up to the tee and we swing our club. And we have swung our club with as much preparation and as training as is appropriate to whatever we've experienced. If you've taken tons of lessons and you have lots of experience, then the chances are your swing will be different than someone who is taking their first lesson for the first time. And in both cases, you have you the chips are thrown, and whatever happens next, you get to respond to in an intelligent manner.
Mm,
And I think that's the lesson. Wherever you are in your journey, whatever comes next. So remember, my favorite class from grad school was continuum mechanics. It's a study of how energy flows through the universe through continuums. It's the level of modeling for materials right before you get to quantum mechanics. So it's the assumption that you're not about to become an atom, but instead you are an amorphous substance that is being modeled that way.
mm,
And one of the first principles of continuum mechanics is the idea of potential. Now, this is really important. I'm not going to bore you with math. I'm just going to speak about it conceptually. The idea is that behind every action, there is a difference in potential. So we think about it in terms of water flowing downhill from high potential to low potential temperature. Our heat flows from a place of high temperature to low temperature. Air flows from a place of high pressure to low pressure. These are universal concepts that govern all forms of energy that flow through the universe. And this particular course sets up the idea that any energy that's flowing first starts from some unseen force that has a difference in potential for that form of energy to flow. So that means if you decide not to consider yourself free from the laws of continuum mechanics and physics, that chances are if there is something happening to you, it too is the expression of energy flowing from high potential to low potential, and you can't stand in the way of movement just as much as you don't want to stand in the way of voltage or current going from high voltage to low voltage. That's what gets you electrocuted, right? So the same idea is that you're not going to resist how life is showing up, and the thing that is happening has a potential difference that it is simply expressing. And a lot of folks don't understand that at a very energetic level. This is just science. I'm not
yes.
making up anything
Well,
spiritual.
it's not just science.
Mm.
You're drawing a metaphor.
Am I?
So so, and I think you're more opaque than you think you are. So let me see if I can make
Uh,
sense of this,
please distill it.
because I understand the physics concepts you're describing. So what that makes me think of is uh, the CEO who called me and said, one of our core values around here is trust. Nobody seems to trust each other. Nobody seems to trust me. People are stealing office supplies at an alarming rate. And when we looked at his employee handbook, as many employee handbooks do, this one was particularly egregious. It said on every page, essentially, we don't trust you as far as we can throw you. You are a high risk that we need to manage. And what I hear what the parallel I'm drawing is that created a high pressure system of mistrust in
Mm.
the employees. And so that led them to flow in the direction of taking what they can from where they can because the system isn't going to give it to them. Is that a
I would tell you that the action that was taken for them to make the decision to say that came from somewhere. There was already movement in place. What you are talking about is a different concept. Well, maybe not different, distinct concept that I enjoy thinking about, which is what happens when an environment is devoid of dignity and engagement. So I remember one of the most important things that ever happened to me was four employees, five, six employees across three companies I owned all stole money within 6 months of each other. One of them was like $100,000, another one was like $90,000, and another one was like $30,000.
not chump change?
It was not chump change, and it was devastating. This was back in the mid 2000s. And I remember the thing I learned, and I even wrote an educational program for business owners to detect fraud called No Snakes on the Plane because of that whole incident. And effectively what happened was, or what I came to rationalize, is that I was responsible for creating an environment where people did not feel seen and heard enough for their voices to matter. And the only way they thought that they could be seen or heard was to generate and maintain their own story to take. So
Right.
that to me is, I mean, again, all in the motion. There are series of potentials that are set up for us to take the actions that are happening. And the way you know that they are real is because they are happening. If as the action unfolds, there is something that is causing it to exist, and understanding what that underlying motivation might be is the study of potential, and understanding that gives you a lot more insight into, okay, how can I create systems that have the energy that I'm looking to manage flow in ways that are desired.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I now do is I don't allow for certain meetings where people don't say anything. You have to, there are meetings we have in our business where you have to contribute because we want your voice to be heard. And we found that people can justify stealing a whole lot less when they know that they are seen, they are heard, and they matter. And if I had to have 130 something thousand dollars, or 100 and I think it was like $220,000, something like that, when we tallied everything up. If I had to have $220,000 stolen from me to be able to understand that people need to be seen, heard, and know that they matter so that their narratives are being managed in the office, and you are actively seeking and understanding the feedback that is happening, however you can interact with it in as authentic a manner as is possible, then that's cheap education.
100%. And you're making me think of, another action that I see leaders taking and golfers take, right? Is it you come up to the ball, you swing, and the ball does not go where you want it to. And so the next thing to do with the club is to slam it on the ground,
Bang, bang,
right?
bang.
Um, you may not even directly blame the person on your team for things going wrong. And if you lose control in such a way that you create fear for them,
Mm.
as anybody would when somebody is lost composure, that club is never going to trust you again. And by the way, neither are any of the clubs that weren't in the room. All the clubs that are still in your club bag, they're gonna be looking at you squinty too, because they're gonna wonder whether they're gonna be the next one to be slammed into the turf.
Well, and on a personal level, I'm always curious, what have I learned? How has my brain chemistry changed because of the reaction that I have now trained myself is acceptable? And is it actually, just because the action was acceptable, is that an appropriate form of behavior? And again, remember, my focus is intelligence.
Mm.
Was that an intelligent response? And if
Intelligent
n-
meaning
Meaning that I,
effectively designed to get future outcomes that you want.
well, let's rephrase that. Is it congruent with an ever evolving present universe? So it's not about the future part will figure itself out. I'm really focused on in this moment, because there are going to be answers and responses that you do now that will not make sense a year
Sure.
from now,
Right.
or a week from now, or even an hour from now.
Yeah.
But in this moment, am I in a place where I am at maximum responsiveness to the feedback that I am getting from a ever evolving universe? And I say that it's not an ethereal response. It's
No, I
like
understand.
the phone call, the person, the customer, the employee that needs, the all of the people that are interacting, all of the forces that are interacting, all the systems that are interacting. Am I in a place where I am optimizing my response so that I am on a trajectory of minimum resistance?
Yeah. So uh I like the golden rule quite a bit,
Mm,
right? Treat others as you would want to be treated. And so I continually make the same conceivable error,
okay.
right? I remember recently, for example, working with a vendor, we had a couple of different meetings, uh, in particular around SEO for my website. And the first call, we had two calls. The first call, it was like pulling teeth to get him to say things that had any meaning for me as a non SEO
SEO
expert,
person. Yeah, for sure.
and also as somebody who didn't know what his offer was. So it was like pulling teeth to get meaning. And I told him, our next call, I'm going to need to I'm going to need you to drive the meaning making for me. So
Mm,
it's not so much work for me. And the next call was okay, but the proposal he sent me was not English. It made no sense. It didn't tell me how it was connected to the outcomes that I wanted. And so I wrote him, I'm going to not work with you. And then the how I would want to be treated part was, and here's why. And his response was so full of vitriol
oh wow.
and diminishment of me,
Mm,
and in fact, like insulting of my of my website, and
hey,
talking about it being like somebody's grandmother's website, which
I don't know. There's some
I,
good grab on
I,
websites out
I
there,
kind
but
of
keep
like.
going.
I kind of like my website. Uh, the thing that was particularly interesting to me as someone who consults with people on culture is that he copied the person who had been kind of his right hand in our calls. And so, not only are they learning about his temper,
Hmm.
they're learning about how do we treat customers or potential customers around here. And also, what is the environment in which I am and how safe can I be if somebody who is not even being paid for this relationship, if that's the way he treats me, as a lesson in how to create an unsafe working environment where people don't put the business's best interest first.
And for you, that's feedback too.
A 100%.
So I recently had our third, no, it was our second meeting with a potential SEO person this week. Uncanny stuff. Can't make it up. So one of the comments we had for her, why we didn't move forward before, was we said, you understand what value looks like in your world, but you have not been able to communicate how the things in your proposal make any sense to the things we've asked for. We
Right.
have no idea
It
whether
sounds really familiar.
these production things that you keep talking about have anything to do with us owning these keywords that we say we want. And they're like, we're going to pay us this much and we're going to produce these things.
Yes.
And we have no idea how these things relate to what we're over here. And we had a whole conversation about it because we talked for an hour before and we're like, the reason we didn't say yes is because we didn't understand. Now, she was just really responsive and said, okay, I get it. Here's what I can't guarantee you, but here's what I understand you're after. And if you're after these, this is kind of the strategy that we need to go through. And in order for the strategy to work, here are all the tactical things that kind of have to happen. And that made a lot more sense to me. And it was like, okay. Plus, I really know the person. I've known her for 20 years, and I'm like, I know she will do right by us. It
Yeah.
just she's kind of new to communicating value. And I said, we all have that problem, right? We're so deep in understanding what our deliverables are to our customers that a lot of times it's hard for us to translate how the work we know that will get them the results they're after translates into the thing they're looking for and the way they think and talk about it.
Yeah. We'll call that the curse of knowledge.
Amen. And the sad thing is that we're very inclined to present our information in such a way that it is likely to be devalued to the point where people won't even understand that it's valuable to begin with, which is exactly the problem you had with the guy. Now, the sad thing is you were his experience where he hit the ball to the left.
Totally.
And instead of simply understanding the feedback of the ball not going straight down the fairway, he blamed the ball.
Right. And
Blamed the ball for
I
being dumb.
even before telling you the story, right? I said, I'm all about the golden rule, and so I keep making the same mistake, which is to give people feedback without asking them if they want.
Ah, it's so funny. So that's where your ball went to the left.
That's right.
I'm
Yeah.
actually learning a lot more about getting permission to give feedback. It's actually something that is it maybe only in the last 4 or 5 years that it's really hit home that my job, especially as a CEO, is to actually do more listening than talking where I can. I don't always get that benefit, but it is so nice, even though frustrating at times because I want to jump in and solve everybody's problems. And if you leave it to me, I know how to do everything. Of course I do. But then I realized that my true value a lot of the times is just being quiet and letting them talk through the answer they already knew. They just needed some space to get there.
Yeah. Well, and getting permission to give people feedback is something that at the S Works we teach managers to do. It's like you don't give feedback in our model until you've first said, "Hey, Hugh, can I give you some feedback?" And even if you report to me, no is
It's
an
still no.
acceptable answer.
Yes. Yes. Only if you're interested in being effective.
Oh yeah, if you don't care about being effective, do whatever you want. And when people object, I say, you want to pour water into my cup? Well, you're gonna have to get me to take my hand off the top first. It may be really good water, and I may be really thirsty.
But if your head is still over the glass, nobody's
right.
going to get help today.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that point. That is actually a really, really cathartic point. I appreciate that a lot, actually, more than you know. So, and I think a lot of times about, and we keep coming back to the point, who are you and what are you teaching yourself and how are you evolving as you handle the ball going to the left? As you metabolize the experience that things are not going the way that you would have ideally envisioned.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's actually the biggest leadership learning opportunity for us is taking that moment to reflect and say, hey, what am I teaching myself? Is this the kind of whatever the reaction is that comes next? And the more space, the better. The less judgment, the better. What are your thoughts there?
The less judgment, the better. I love. And you're making me think of Deidre, who is a CEO whom I know, who has only just taken up golf and is, according to her, very terrible at it. And she is loving every minute. And
Love it.
so it brings us back to Mark Twain's uh, "Golf is a good walk spoiled." It's only a good walk. It's only spoiled if you insist on the success metrics of hitting par or hitting under par or whatever it is,
Or hitting
uh,
at
or
all.
hitting right. Deidre is not having a great time because she's going out and playing a great game. Deidre is having a great time because she's loving the experience,
Right.
regardless of the outcome.
And strangely enough, if there were anything to pretend to aspire to, it would live somewhere in that last statement of yours,
Yeah,
where regardless of where the ball chooses to go, you can see where there's value and you are not hung up on an assessment that does not serve your outcome.
right. The attachment. I think people mistake detachment for not caring.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That I am going to be okay regardless of the outcome is detachment. It does not require that I say, well, to hell with it, and not put in all my effort.
Well, we said it, I think, a little earlier in a different way, and I'll tell you that your work ends with the swing.
Mm. Hell yeah.
I mean, whatever went into that swing, however much practice, however much patience, however much intention, you're the everything that you are that has brought you to this moment, all of it ends with the swing.
You no longer
After
have any
that,
influence on the ball, right?
after you have done as much as you could, and for wherever the results take you, we are here, and it is now.
If the ball lands on the green, if the ball goes in the hole, if a pelican swoops in and snatches it out of the air,
From the air?
none of that is in your control.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
which brings us to the Serenity Prayer, which I can never remember how it goes. So I'm going to look it up so that I can read it
Look it
because
up.
I really do love it. Do you know
Yes,
the
please.
Serenity Prayer?
I remember we've said it quite a few times on the show, and I love always revisiting it because it's a good thing to always
It
remind
is.
ourselves of.
It is. The Serenity Prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change.
Mhm.
All by itself. Ooh, gets
Oh,
me breathing, right?
yeah.
Okay. That's a tough one.
Finish
Except
it.
except
Yeah,
I'm gonna
please.
take it a bite at a time.
Yeah, please.
Uh, God grant me the
Please.
serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, which,
Yes.
guess what, is only me.
There's there is a book I'm reading now. There I belong to a coaching program started by a guy named Dan Sullivan. I belonged to it for like 12 years, 20 years ago.
Mm,
And he co-authored a book with another fella, maybe four or five of them. The last one is called 10x is easier than 2x.
love that book.
Well, the guy who wrote that book now owns a company that does coaching.
Mm.
And I'm reading his newest book on scaling, and it is a butt kicker. It is incredibly affronting. And what he talks about, he calls you out and he says, you are probably lying to yourself because you're standing in the way of your own scaling, and you are likely optimizing things in your business that should not exist.
Optimizing things that should not exist.
Oh, that's
Ooh,
rough. That's
Yeah.
so rough. And you know what? Sadly, I think he's right. And so I haven't finished the book yet, but I am going to bravely try to keep reading at my
Mm.
own peril. And the reason I'm talking about this now is the second part of that prayer. I know you're going to get to the third part in a second. The courage to change the things we can.
Hmm.
And oh my gosh, do some of these things require courage? Years of
100%.
comfort and incalcitrance and fear about being bigger and who you have to change to become the person you've always dreamed about being.
It reminds me of the joke, guys searching under a streetlight for his keys. So he says, "Hey, somebody's passing by. Hey, can you come and help me look for my keys?" And they spend 10 more minutes looking all over for the keys all over the place. And finally, the guy who's helping him says, "Where did you last see him?" The guy's like, "Around the corner in the alley." I said, "Why are we looking for the keys here?" He says, "Well, the light's better over here."
Wow.
And boy, does that have some
Wow.
parallels for how we run our businesses.
Holy Crowley. Oh no. Wow. Well, I appreciate that. And so the statement about the courage to change the things we can really hits home every time,
Yeah.
especially this week now that, if we are talking about this, the purpose of the exercise that I'm going through is to explore what gets to simplify, what gets to shift, what gets to
Mm.
change such that we can invite the scaling of our business into our lives. And it really does have to do with being courageous about either just stopping the things that just don't really serve us anymore, just
Yeah.
because we have used these mechanisms and these people and these relationships and these systems to get to where we are today.
Yep.
It's almost certain that they will only keep us in a place where we're linear, and
That
having to be ready
that
to
the
let them
light is
go.
better. The light is better here.
Yes, yes, that's
Yeah.
the concept. So I don't know. It's affronting, it's challenging. What can I tell you?
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the
Know
difference.
the difference. And that, I think, is probably the most challenging statement of the whole prayer.
Yeah.
No. What is your way of beginning to, or at least attempting to divine the difference between the two?
I mean, one of the things that I said, and it's not true,
Okay.
although it sure is useful as a heuristic. The courage to change the things I can, right? I said, and it's just me.
Hmm.
That's a big part of it, right? I mean, it certainly, if the coin is sitting on the table heads up, yes, I can change and flip it over to be tails. Um, and the courage to do that, the courage to take that, make that risk, that's that's on me. Um, Sometimes the difference between the things that I can change and the things that I cannot change and must accept is that sometimes it's just today, right? I can't change that today. I can't change that today because the bank isn't open anymore. And I'm just going to have to wait until it's open in the morning before I can make that change. Sometimes I can't change that today because I don't have any more insight. And all of the things that I can think to try, I have tried. And so now there's but patience to gain new information, gain new perspective, allow things, the dust to settle. How do you start to know the difference?
I guess it actually, in the quietest moments of my life, I come to the realization that more things fall into that that first category. Like, I realize change to courage to change the things I can implies that I have some kind of illusory control. It's an implication and it's a model. Can I change things? Yes. Do I want to change things? Maybe. Do I want to have things change? Absolutely. And what I'm coming to appreciate in my own life is if I can see and appreciate things the way they are as they show up, whatever is right will expose itself.
Mm.
Whatever is to wash away will wash away. There is I think I've shared this with you before, Chinese art of Wei Wu Wei. It's a ancient practice of intentionally and actively doing nothing. And I don't spend a lot of my time doing nothing. However, however, I'm learning that doing nothing actively can look like listening. Doing nothing actively can look like breathing and centering myself in the middle of conflict so that whatever shows up next is exactly what needs to be said so that the other person is inspired. There's a team member right now that is actively selling me my own ideas. He is actively building a framework for a methodology for migration that I can honestly tell you I came up with 2 years ago, and I have been thinking about it and I have been trying to teach them for years. And now he has become inspired and he is talking me through what I have spent years teaching him.
Mm.
Here's why it matters. If I believe it and I teach it, I have to shove it down other people's throats for the indefinite future. If he teaches it to me and convinces me to agree with him, he becomes the new expert and he gets to go
Right
lead a
on.
generation of people who train in my company.
Yeah.
So am I really incentivized to be the one that makes that change? Or if I can simply be convinced that it's the right idea
This
and
is
let
the
him go
wanting. Do
forward.
you want things to change? Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Do I have to change things? No, not anymore. The more I force, the more I push, the more I realize things are harder. There's resistance. Whereas there is a beautiful allowing that's starting to happen for the things that get to be, as my good friend Aaron would say, influenced.
There are two things that I'm thinking of in response to your story. One is gonna sound woo woo, and so we'll get to that one second. The first one, I used to put a lot of time and attention into dog training.
Hmm.
And I remember watching a video by the monks of New Skeet, who I think are in Maine or somewhere in New England, and they are breeders of and trainers of German shepherds and also whatever other dogs you want to have, send them to train them. And of course, most of the training they're doing is with the human owners. And I remember in the video, this one of these dog owners wanted them to help with the dog's habit of pulling on the leash. Right? We've all seen these dogs, and maybe you maybe you have one. Pulling their owners down the park path. And he said to the guy, "Hold on to this leash." He gave the owner one end of the leash. He said, "Hold on to that." And then he's just started pulling. And the owner pulled back because the assignment was hang on to the leash.
Hmm.
And the lesson, right? I mean, the owner could very well have simply gone wherever the monk was leading him, not what instinct said to do. And so there's a lot that we do that runs contrary to brain wiring when we're
Mhm.
trying to lead people in the directions that we want. And I see you giving this guy slack that's allowing him to go, all right, well, why don't I move in the direction of the slack? uh, we will move in the direction of freedom a lot of the time. So that's one thing. The other thing, the one that's going to sound perhaps a little woo woo. It's been 2 weeks, almost exactly 2 weeks since I last had a migraine, which is a lot of time recently. Sometimes I go
Mhm.
months, so may well be a coincidence. Every once in a while, there's a feeling that I get in the base of my skull that either is nothing or it leads to a migraine. For the last 2 weeks, every time I feel that, I just stop whatever I'm doing, I breathe, and I just love the sensation.
Mm.
Not, and I used to love my body. I just go, okay, like what an incredible body I've got. It did not prevent migraines to do that. There's a guy named Joe Hudson who called pleasure. He said pleasure is a change in sensation. And so I was just like, well, what if I just decide that this sensation, as unpleasant as it may be, is also kind of glorious, and I just stop and breathe and love the painful sensation of what might be a migraine starting.
You
And I have
would
not had a
be,
migraine.
and we will end here because I think you'll like this. You would be fascinated to learn more about J. Krishnamurti. He was one of the most famous spiritual speakers coming from India. He died in the mid 70s. What's interesting about him is that for almost 45 years, he com- he mentioned, can't use the word complain. He talks about having a mind numbing, splitting pain
Hmm.
that would come from the base of his spine through his head to one of his eyes. And he would talk about the fact that that completely excruciating pain that he's had from childhood helped him absolutely find grace, focus, and arguably enlightenment.
Hmm.
And you may get something out of learning more about his story and listening to his works. Because what you just described sounded very similar to what
Hmm.
he would talk about in a number of his talks. And we will stop
Very
there.
interesting.
Hmm.
All right. Well, I don't know that I mentioned this earlier, folks, but if you are here, you have been listening to Hugh and me in something that we call Leadership Uncertain, which we claim is Adventures in Confusion. I just lost a word. Confusion
It's
and
confusion,
power.
it's
Confusion,
power,
power, love, and
love,
dignity.
and dignity. Yes, sir.
I got stuck in the confusion part. So, thank you for joining us for this. I would say we definitely touched on confusion. We touched on power quite a lot. Hung out a little bit around love there, and dignity came up as well. This time, Hugh mentioned it, where it's
Mhm.
often one of the bells I ring a lot. Thank you for joining us.